So a function is something in a programming language which allows you to avoid the repetition. Okay. So in this example where I am trying to build a multiplication table using while loop, you see that I kind of am writing the same piece of code one more time just for one simple change. This is the change. So here x is 9, here x is 8. If that is the case, okay, and in that case, if you happen to build something like this, you should not do it. So instead of that, you build a function. So we'll see about the function later point in time, but first understand how the basic syntax of a function look like. So I just keep the code handy. So this is just a commented part of my code. So how do you define a function? So in Python, you said def my func, you give any name, okay, just any name, and then you just print it. I'm just printing here just for simple printing sake, but you can do anything. So this is the function, and nothing will happen if you run this code. So if you say run this code, you see nothing getting executed. Even the hello is not getting printed. So you need to call a function to get the value out of it. So how do you call a function? You just simply call it by name, right? So for example, if you have a function with a name called myfunc, what you can do in this page or somewhere else, you can say myfunc open and close. Okay, that's how you call a function. Now this time, if you run this function, you will find hello as an output. Now I want to say hello somebody, and then I use a string format, and that somebody is the name of a person. Okay, my name. Okay, let's say my name. What is this my name coming from? It can be a variable, so I can say my name, and I pass on the value here, and I just call this function. What happens? It will print my name. I change the value to something like this, and it is going to print that one. So my name is getting changed. In function, if you happen to change a variable within a function and you want to do it from outside, you can always pass it as a variable. So instead of this, you can say that let's use the variable from here called my name, and in the context of function we call it as a parameter. So parameter is a value which can be passed when you call a function. So what I can do now, I can just simply say xyz, and that will be printed as the value. So you see here it is saying hello xyz, okay, because this xyz is coming as the value my name, because the definition of the function in the line number 16 accepts a value within a parameter. What happens if you don't pass anything when you call the function? It will give you an error because it expects you to pass something, and that something could be an empty string also, but you need to pass that explicitly. Okay, that's what mandatory here. So if you say empty string, there'll be nothing printed after hello because you passed nothing. Okay, you passed just a simple empty string, but you need to pass that. Now if you replace that with a meaningful thing like my name, then what will happen is that it will basically go ahead and print the value of the name, okay, along with the hello. And that's what the basic function looks like. A function can have one or more parameter, 0 or 1 parameter, right? So for example, if you say this function takes f name, that's first name, and l name, that is last name. Okay, if I have this kind of thing, I say f name and then I pass L name. Okay, and then I'll say hello, first name, space, last name. I format the string. Now what happens if I call this function like this? It will give me an error because it now expects me to send two parameters. I have passed only one. So you notice here, the moment the definition changes, all my callers have to follow the definition. So in that case, if I have to pass the second value, I pass the second value as a second parameter separated by comma. So you can see now I'm passing two values, and those two values will come as my print output, which is hello, first name, space, last name. That's the full name. Okay, so that you can see that you can pass 0 or more parameters, and you basically pass them as a sequence, right? And they will be considered as, first one will be considered as fname, and the name of the parameter is up to you. Whosoever is writing that function is up to you to decide what the name would be. So it should provide something which is meaningful and understandable to others. Now let's come back to this previous example where we were writing this piece of code where we were trying to build a multiplication table. Now if I use this definition, let's keep it handy so that you know how it looks like. If I use this definition and say table, okay, just give a name of the function called table. You can always also use func underscore table, anything it's fine. So you just say table and then you say num. Okay, that num is a variable or a parameter which will hold the table for which you need to build a num. Now let's reuse this code. So I copy this whole piece and I close it over here. Now I need to indent it. You do need to remember that if you have to build something with below the definition, inside the definition you need to use this tab. Python works with the tab, so you just have to put the tab to make sure that they are part of that. Now this x is not x here, so it is num. So I'm using num and I'm using num. So what I'm basically doing is that I'm trying to get the value, and then I am going to call this function. Now if I say table with the value x, what will happen? This x is basically the num. You can even directly pass the value 9. We generally don't do it, so we just let's say define a variable, set the value, and then pass the variable. So you can directly also put 9 over here. That doesn't really make a lot of difference in terms of programming language, but for readability purpose we don't do that. So you pass the value 9. You just had one n started with 1. It'll go through a loop up to 10 and print a nice little table. Now what we can do, every time there is a table getting printed, we let's say put a line. Okay, if you say so, then let's print that. So you see that table for 9 is getting printed. Now let's make life a little simple. Okay, I say 9. This will also work fine. Okay, no problem. Now I need a table for 8. I just need to replace the value of 9 to 8, and it becomes the table for 8. Now if I need a table for, let's say, 9, 10, and so on and so forth, I can basically define that way. So you can see that now I'm getting table printed for 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Now I say for I in range of 10. Okay. let's say 11, because then 10 will be considered, and I'll start from 1. Okay, I don't need a table for 1. Let's put a table for 2, and then I print all the table values for I. Okay, I even avoided repeating calling table with multiple things. So I said that I need to print the multiplication table from 2 to 10 by reusing this function. Okay, because for every multiplication table I need to do this. Okay, so let's see the experience. You see over here now the output. Okay, I just wanted to show you. So it started with 2 and then went to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so it basically went ahead and created all the tables. And if you notice, if I delete all the lines typed earlier, it took only 9 lines to do this. Just 9 lines. If you have to write this thing again and again, probably it would take you not only many more lines, but also if you have to change something, let's say if you have to build this thing with some value, let's say you want to say value something, doesn't make sense, but if you want to add something like that, you have to add it to every step, right? This is just one simple area where you change this and everything will be changed. You can, instead of, let's say, making some illogical changes, let's make this star. Okay, that's also a computer based multiplication sign, so you can also change the sign and it will be reflected in all the outputs, right? So this is how you must consider having this kind of um, repeating activity coming over here. Now I want to pause here and ask you if you have any questions. No question? Things are clear? Yeah. Tell me again. Yeah. Yeah. So this is called breakpoint. So if you, let's say, click over here and click here, this becomes a breakpoint. Now it is dark red, you can see, because I clicked, which means now I can run this program step by step. If I execute that from a debugger, so in programming language, what happens? The programming language compiles your English language typed program syntax into some generic term, right? So which is a compiled version, and that compiled version gets executed in your machine. Okay, so if you want to see what exactly is happening in each step and wait for that to happen and then you move ahead, you put a breakpoint. By using the breakpoint, you basically going sort of slow. Okay, so you have seen that if I run this code, it'll simply go ahead and type. It's very fast. It's probably fraction of a second. But if you put a breakpoint, it will not do that. Until unless you move, you can't really do that. So you need to first attach a debugger and then do this activity. And when you write a longer programming language, you don't really execute the code all the time. You basically wait for it to happen while you check your code if you have a doubt. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think I don't want to overwhelm with a lot of information today. This is a bit a complex topic which I wanted to talk today about while and function. What I would recommend is that let me open my portal, okay, so that you can understand that. So if you have that URL handy for Python for Kids, let me just. So if you go to this while loop, we talked about it. So whatever I showed, demonstrated, you will mostly find all of them over here. And I also have an exercise task of making this while loop to create a multiplication table for 17, 18, and 19. You can build your own way of doing it, right? And try out things. And I also covered a bit function. So I talked about function, and then I talked about passing multiple different parameters. And then actually, I did not talk about it, but it's mentioned over here, a function for doing nothing, okay? There could be scenarios where you might need to check things. So you just don't need to write anything in the function, just check if you can call a function, make sure that accessibility, etc. So we often, for testing purpose, build that thing. You can also set a default value. So you have seen that if you have two parameters, you have to pass them, but if you have default value set, you can skip them and the default value will be considered. So you can also explore that thing here. And also there is a code available section. So you can see there is a nice little link over here. If you click on that, it basically will download a Python file which will have a code available, right? So you will observe that file available. So if I just go ahead and open this file, you will find the file available over here. So that way you try to build, let's say, a multiplication table with different values, which I already demonstrated in my class, and try to do something like 1 to 20. Okay, all the values, build a multiplication table with nice formatting, making sure that each of the table has a header, what is that multiplication table is, etc., so that you are comfortable with the syntax, because function is something which you will be using very frequently when you start playing with the Python or using Python in the scenarios for your um, application or for your mathematical calculation. If you build something like that, you need to build the function by yourself. And if you build a function, this is a very simple, you don't need to remember a lot of things, but having to have a practice will give you a lot more confidence. Okay, so you can just test it out, try it out, and play with it. I think I'm done for today. If you have any further question, maybe we can discuss. Otherwise, I can give you back something around some 22 minutes today.